Hi guys, and welcome to this edition of the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. Today we're going to be talking about mental health, a very important subject. We missed Mental Health Awareness Week, but a little bit on purpose, so I kind of think we should be aware about this all the time. Although I'm not poking holes in any good work that people did during that week and will continue to do so. This is a very open and frank chat. We talk about a lot of our experiences. There's a lot of advice there. And, you know, on the show, we have Pixie, who is a hero, by the way. She's gone through a lot, wants to do a lot to help people. We have Carla, who is a counsellor, very passionate about helping people, very calming influence and a great voice. And Shane, who knocked it out of the park this week. He was really, really good. Really impressed with his input this week, and I love him for it. I just wanted to open up and just say that we have an inbox on Facebook. It's a lot easier than emailing people. If you're feeling a bit lonely, if you are feeling a bit down, you can message us. I want people to know that the Shrewsbury Biscuit is a safe place for people to speak to us if you're feeling low, if you have mental health problems, or even if you're just a bit lonely and fancy someone to chat to. We have a team of people that's there to speak to. There's me, there's Julie, there's Shane, and we're friendly people, and we encourage people to message in if you need someone to talk to. Also, there are many ways of getting help for mental health, and it's like Carla explains in this episode, everyone has mental health, and it's very, very important to keep on track with it. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. It's not always the best. It's a bit of a taboo for some people. People don't like talking about it, but I really encourage people to, venture out there and try a few things out. And whatever method it is you use, whatever you do that fits you to fix your mental health, do it. And lastly, before we get into the episode, I want to talk a bit about social media. There's a lot going on at the moment, politically. There's lots of, racial abuse, sexist comments, things. There's lots going on, okay? And I just want people to know that, it's happened to me recently. I had to remove someone on Facebook that I cared about because of the posts that they were putting on was very negative, and it was affecting me in a bad way. I took the advice of Jim Hawkins, who was here last week, and I removed him from Facebook. You can message me on inbox if you the messenger if he wants to get in touch with me. And you know what? I feel a lot better for it. And I want to encourage people to, if there's somebody in a group, or if there's somebody in a group, you can hide them so you can't see their thing. If there's someone annoys you, you can block them. You can remove people, and you shouldn't feel bad about it. Even if they're a family member, and they've annoyed you, take them off Facebook. If they ask why, explain to them. Your posts put me in a bad place, so I've chosen to make it so I can't see them. You can message me on Facebook if you need me. It's a great way to just make your life a little bit more positive. Right, so here it is, our episode, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you to everyone that helped put it together. To Carla and Pixie, and to Helen as well, who is Shane's mom. She works at the Millbrace Trinity Churches. She let us use a room there, and it was really fantastic, so thanks for that. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have anything to add, make sure you drop us an email or message us on Facebook. Our email is shrewsburybiscuitpodcast@gmail.com, and we'd like to hear your feedback. And hope you enjoy the episode, and peace out. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. I'm your host, Alex Whiteley, and joined with me today, we have the beautiful Shane Hinton.
Hello.
How's it going?
I'm all right.
And we have Carla.
Hello.
And Pixie.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. Just give me some audio, Pixie.
Hello.
That's it. Get it right into your mouth there. Get it in there. It's fine. The stand itself, apart from mine, will actually move and get push into your face.
Is that better?
That's a lot better. You sound amazing. And sat with us today is my oldest son, Leon. He's come up with me for the weekend. He's going to stay with me, and he's here to watch what we do. So this is weird for me.
He's a biscuit in training.
He's a biscuit in training. He did actually ask me in the car. I was like, Dad, can I come on your show when I'm older? I was like, yeah, of course you can.
Oh,
Yes.
you can be the little biscuit.
You can be the little biscuit.
Today we put a show together. We were going to talk about this stigma sort of surrounding mental health and things we can do to kind of alleviate the sort of stress that comes with that, right? Mm-hmm. Because it was Mental Health Week awareness last week, but I don't believe in that. I don't believe in Mental Health Awareness Week. I think we should all be mental health aware all the time.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mental health awareness every day. And
it can't just be one day because
absolutely.
we don't just suffer for one day and then all right the rest of the day.
Health doing as well, not just mental health awareness.
Yeah.
Mental health
trying to see what we can do to help.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And one of the reasons why this attracted me so much is because, I mean, I've been very open and honest on the last couple of shows about the therapy I'm going through and the sort of things I've been dealing with. And I'm really positive about it. And it's really weird because, like Shane was just saying before we hit record, I am the most socially awkward person you'll ever meet. And it's really weird how I'll just be like, I don't want to talk to a stranger. But then I'll be like, let's do this. It's just kind of just how I feel about it. I want to find out a bit about both of you guys. First of all, Carla, can I find out sort of what your background is and why you're here today?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, my background, okay. So I grew up in Shropshire. I ran off at 16 on the National Express bus, went to London.
Fantastic.
Worked as a designer, drawing pictures, as picked up by a boss at the time. You can draw, right, come and draw for us. That was great, loved it. I liked drawing, I liked people, so I did a lot of that. Exhibited my pictures. Did that for a while, moved to Suffolk, then realised my family was still in Shropshire and came back here. Carried on doing the design work that I've been doing for years and did some mentoring with Barclays, mentoring people in business. And realised that I loved working with people and talking to people and listening to people. And then I started doing some training for counselling for business. Realised I could do it, enjoyed it, carried on with it, thought I'd do something a bit different, just use the skills. Then I thought, all right, I'm going to carry on doing this. And continued, graduated a couple of years ago. Love the work as a person-centred counsellor now. So really, I've been doing this kind of work for a very long time, but it took me quite a long time to realise that I really wanted to do it as a job.
What do you think it is that drives you to want to do something like this? Is it like an inbuilt source of empathy that you just have to? You want to help people? Does it help?
It's an interesting question, because most people when they go into counselling training think, "Oh, I want to help people," and yeah, we're there to help people, but more than that, we're there to listen. We're there to help people to work out what is going on for them. We're not there to rescue. We're there to really help people to get clarity. For me, that's what it's about. I thought I was going into it to fix people. We don't do that. People fix themselves with the kind of work that we do. And they have the knowledge. They have the ability to fix themselves. And we're there as people to be alongside them and help them.
Oh, fantastic! And do you work? Who do you work with? At the moment?
Well, I work for myself, so I work in private practice, and then I also work for the Green Oak Foundation in Shrewsbury, where I do some paid work and some voluntary work. That's a community interest company, and they offer affordable counselling to the people of Shropshire, not just Shrewsbury. So basically, if you can get to Green Oak, they will see people. Short waiting list. Couple of weeks at the most.
Somebody mentioned that to me. Was it you? I don't know.
Probably me.
It's probably me.
Was it you?
I think it was
Somebody
me.
mentioned that to me. They were like, "Oh, you want to go through NHS? Do this instead." I was really lucky with my situation. Well, thank you for that, Carla. It was really nice to sort of get an idea as where you're coming from and stuff. And I feel
I
like
still do the creative work as well, which is great. So I do a bit of design, mostly counselling.
I've got a bit to add about that later on. About that. Pixie.
Hello.
How's it going? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for
finally
asking
got
me.
you on the show.
Well, I kind of asked myself really, didn't I, in a way?
No, I'm really glad you did. You got in touch. You were like, you told me about your podcast.
Yeah, I sent you a link to the one I did about the charity that I've set up.
Yeah. And what I really liked about your podcast is how vulnerable it is, and how honest and how sort of naked it is in some certain, you're very honest about things. And I love that. I absolutely adore that.
I think it's really important to be honest because mental health is such a massive subject. I just think it's really, it's taken me a long, long time to actually be very honest and open about how I feel. Mainly because, and this might sound a bit weird, but for years, I didn't know how I felt, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I knew I was struggling when I was working. Any amount of stress, I'd go off sick straight away. But I never really understood why. And it's only when I had my breakdown after I lost my stepdad, which would be about 4.5 years ago now, that everything kind of came tumbling out. And I think I had to hit rock bottom to actually realise kind of what was going on. And that resulted in an inpatient stay at a psychiatric hospital for 6.5 months. So I was very, very, very unwell. But during that time, I'd learned so much about myself. Some good, some bad, but then that started me off on a very creative path. I did a lot of writing, did a lot of blogging, and sort of like fast forward sort of four years, and I had this, what I thought was perhaps a little bit of a pipe dream idea to set up a charity, and it's all starting to go really, really well. And, it's something I'm massively, massively proud of. So I'm here to kind of talk about my experiences, I suppose, and hopefully a bit about my charity. And just have a really honest, open talk about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we all have mental health. This is the thing. Mental health doesn't mean that we are unwell or that we're well. We all have mental health.
Yes.
It's important. Some people say, come and see me, and they'll say, oh, but, you've got it all sorted. I mean, it just simply isn't true. Because I have trained as a counsellor doesn't mean that I am on top of the world and okay all the time. I have had experiences of sitting on the floor with my back against the wall in the dark thinking, what is going to happen next? Where am I going? And I'm not immune to it.
And in that moment, it's a very dark, lonely place because a lot of people don't have family to talk to, don't have friends to talk to. And I've been there a lot of times, and I'm lucky. I have a brilliant doctor, and I've been with him for the last 8.5 years. And I can honestly say he has saved my life more times than he realises because he listens. He never says anything particularly mind-blowing, but he listens. He's calm. And then we rationalise it out. And I think just the fact that he's listened to me, whether it's on the phone or or whether I'm at the surgery at the time, that to me is really important. I know when you were saying, when you were introducing yourself, I actually wanted to say how important it is to actually find a person you can trust and a person that will listen to you.
Absolutely,
it's just
I agree.
Vital.
It's one of the greatest things that people can give to each other is giving their space, giving their time to listen. We don't have to mend people.
No.
People are not asking to be fixed or mended. They are crying out for someone to listen.
And
it's
just
important
to be there for them at that
without
moment.
Judgment and without any agenda.
Absolutely.
To be there. And when you mentioned about your doctor, he was there and he listened. And that's one of the greatest things that we can do is to be there, to sit with someone and to hear them.
I think it's also important to when you get to that sort of point where you are reaching out for help, it's being able to connect with your either doctor or counsellor or anything like that. Because a lot of people I've spoken to in similar sort of scenarios who try counselling, it didn't work, and I didn't like my counsellor, and just never did it again. I'm like, sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 counsellors, and you're just like, I can't connect with this, and then there'll be one, you just click.
Yeah,
I think that's really right, actually, Shane. And one of the things that I say to people in my introductory session is we have to enjoy each other's company. We have to be able to connect.
Yes.
If you feel you can't connect with me, say.
Yeah.
I don't mind, because we need to be able to build a relationship. If we can't relate, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And I may be able to find you someone who you can relate to.
Exactly. And like when I was going through my counselling, you know, I was quite lucky. The first one I went to, I just got on with straight away, like a house on fire, and never had any real problems. You know, where we got on, and she was able to speak to me in my language, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's important
Yeah,
as well.
it
It's
is,
been able
absolutely.
to find that common ground between that you can then, you know, the translation between you can be, you know, it's a lot easier.
And to find someone you feel you can be honest and open with, because not being able to open up and be honest means there are barriers in the way. And that's important to try and get those barriers
obviously
out of the way.
that encourages you essentially not being fully open, like what you said about being brutally honest. I think where I had my turning point was stopping, you know, was literally being absolutely brutally honest with myself and everyone around me, and that then started the process off, if that makes sense. It's just being just stopping and being, hold on a minute, right?
Absolutely.
Come on, cards on the table, kind of thing, like, to myself.
Well,
know.
it's like sometimes I liken it to carrying a bag of rocks around. You know, every time something happens, or when we're dealing with something, a challenge, we're putting rocks in our bags and we're dragging them around with us.
Yeah.
When we're being honest, we're taking the rocks out, we're having a look. We might decide to put them back and have another look later, and we might decide to chuck them over the hedge. It's important because we choose.
I think with my circumstances, what I'd done was, I mean, I can't go into. I don't want to go into. I'm choosing not to go into a lot of detail what happened. But, you know, growing up is hard. You know, it's not easy, and some people have a more difficult journey than others. And you know, I found things hard that I just kind of pushed to the back of my mind. Be the nice guy. Be the nice guy. Be the nice guy. Be kind. Hold doors open. You know, do a podcast to try and help people. Do be good. Do good things. But then what I found is when I was doing things where my mind was like, say like, okay, so I'm going to be brutally honest. My lad here and me, we fell out recently. Okay, well, it was something really simple, and it really upset me. We were playing a game of FIFA, and I was losing. I couldn't win. And I kept snapping. I kept shouting.
Got to get better at FIFA then, mate.
And the thing is, I'm a nice guy. I consider myself as a nice guy. I'm not one of these that'll go around and be like, hello, I'm not racist, I'm not nasty. But like, when I was playing this game, it was something in my subconscious that was just, it was just coming out, and I just didn't like it. And then there were certain things that was happening. I wasn't lazy. I just didn't care about certain things. And like, you know, with my job, for example, I wasn't doing my job. I wasn't doing my job properly because I just didn't care. And when it got to that point where it was affecting my family and it was affecting my job, I was kind of like, I need to get help. And it was at that point, that was my turning point. You know, it was like, I needed to do something to change my life. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my kid. I'm going to lose my job. Lose my podcast. I'll be like, Shane, on this podcast, and people won't let us listen. You know, so like, there's like two different examples there of why people go out and get help. Okay, so whether it's like they've hit rock bottom, or whether they've done something that they really regret. What other reasons do people come to you for counselling? You know, what's the
many reasons, but you know, relationship problems.
Yeah.
People come because they think that their relationship is going wrong. Sometimes it can be because they're angry about something else.
Yeah.
Sometimes their relationship is not working. But mostly that's because they're not communicating with the other person in the relationship, or with the whole host of people that are in the relationships with them. Loads of stuff boils down to communication.
I've said that for years, even since I was a kid. I've been like, communication's key.
It is,
Communication's
absolutely.
key.
And open, honest, kind communication can be really helpful. To not be pointing the finger and saying, you always, you never, you did this, but to say, I wonder if you realise when that happens, I feel this, is a really key one with communication.
Can you say that again, but say it to my wife, Karen? I'm joking.
This goes out to...
You can come too. But it's important to not be combative and, you know, to point the finger, to be talking openly with people.
Yeah.
It can change things for people.
Yeah, it really does. And like, something which me and my girlfriend really work hard on is being absolutely openly honest about anything, everything. You know, just be completely straight up and upfront. so there's no burning. You know, we all fall into a trap of like, oh, I'm just gonna. Oh, I won't say anything because it's just easier just to keep your mouth shut. There's none of that in my house. she was straight out with it, you know, and which is brilliant, which I really like because I don't really pick up on subtle hints very well. I don't know whether it comes with the genes
but again,
or what.
that goes back to carrying the rocks around.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to carry the rock. You're going to put it in your bag and drag it around, or you're going to look at it, decide what's going on and confront the person and talk about it in a kindly way, because otherwise you're choosing to carry the turbulence around with you.
And the other important thing that we have in our house is that we don't shout at each other. We both talk, and if one of us starts getting, you know, it's just like, right, we'll table it for 5 minutes and we'll just go separate ways. I'll go out for a cigarette or something, or, you know, we'll just come back to it in a minute.
And it's okay to shout if you agree that you're both okay with shouting.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to say, that some people do shout at each other because they're safe. They feel safe. It's all right.
I think
it's about agreement on how you behave within a relationship.
We both, me and just, you know, I mean, this is just us, you know, for our household. We find it works because we both had, you know, shouty upbringings, and we both feel for ourselves that in our pasts, there in time when we ended up shouting when we've not been heard. So we make a massive effort to make sure we're both heard, both sides of the water, as it were, you know, which means that neither of us needs to shout because we're both listening. You know. So
what you're saying is you've talked it through, you've come to an agreement about how your relationship works, and that's where I was going with the communication.
Yeah, exactly.
Really, that if people talk when there are relationship problems, it can help, but there has to be an agreement about how to go forwards, and that can be a lot of the work that people do in
Do you think it tends to be more complex when we talk about families? What about the main nucleus of the family? You know, that mum, dad, brothers and sisters, because you're lumbered with them for the rest of their lives. You know.
Well, actually, you're not.
No, well, I'm not.
No,
I
you're
chose not to.
This is where I did mention on it before. Like, this is where I wanted to dig into the fact of the narcissistic family tree. You know, sort of ideology, I guess. Is that the right word? You know, the sort of setup. Because actually, this is where the misconception is that regardless of who it is in your life, whether they're, you know, mum, dad, brother, sister, cousin, uncle, it doesn't matter who it is, if they have a negative impact on your well-being or on your mental health or on your life, or, you know, if they're a toxic entity, then you absolutely have every right in your power to cut that person out.
And you have the right,
and that's fine.
And that is exactly what I did 12 months ago. And I was going to say, I know you commented on it before, that if you're brought up in a family situation where the communication is pretty awful and you're not heard and you're not listened to, as an adult, it's very, very hard. This is me speaking from experience, great experience, that it's actually very hard to ask for help.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think it took me far too many years, because I was reaching sort of like crisis points, and then I moved house, and luckily have the most amazing doctor in the world. But, you know, growing up, it was, I mean, I hate saying my mother and my father because I've blocked them from my life for reasons I will come on to later, and my sister, you know, she was always perfect. I was always the one who was a nuisance, and I was never listened to. I mean, I got bullied throughout the whole of my secondary school life, and my mother had no idea until somebody told her. And this was sort of, you know, probably 10 years after I'd left school, because I felt like I was an invisible person. You know, my sister was marvellous and this and that. And at my first day at secondary, every single teacher said, I hope you're going to be as good as your sister. So there was that pressure straight away. And straight away, my head said, well, no, I'm going to be me. And that's why I've gone out of my way to be me. I want to be me as an individual with all my flaws and all my good points, rather than be somebody else's clone, because I wouldn't be true to myself. But I think, you know, families can either be very, very good, very helpful, very supportive, very understanding, or they can be completely the opposite, which makes it really, really, really hard. And it sort of took oh gosh, a whole lifetime of trauma that I went through, that I made the decision 12 months ago to block them from my life. And it's something...
It's hard.
It's hard because people look at you and like, oh my goodness, but that's your family. And it's like, no.
But it's also your choice, Pixie, because we have that choice. People say I don't have the choice, but we do actually have the choice about who we have in our lives. If it's whether it's friends or relatives, people that have drifted into our lives, that when we take a good hard look, they're causing us problems.
I mean, I don't miss them, which I know might sound a little bit callous to people listening, but this is one example of not having a helpful and supportive family. But after I had my breakdown, I had my second admission for anorexia. I was very, very, very ill. They didn't think I would even survive the weekend. And I didn't see my mother for 6 weeks. And that's just one example of her behaviour. And I mean, the staff were absolutely mortified, you know, and I had no one come and see me. I actually had to go home on the train to go and see my cat, bless her. After 6 weeks, I got weekend leave. My mother never once came to collect me, and I was in Stafford, had to get the train home and back again. Every Friday home and every Sunday back to hospital. She never helped. And even when I had like a whole room full of luggage to like bring home, I still had to do it on the train.
That's soul destroying. Really soul destroying.
It is.
And how did you find a way out of that?
I tried to sort of convince myself that it was okay, even though I knew that it wasn't. And then, you know, there were just so many instances where they stopped me driving about 18 months ago because my weight dropped again. And my mother told me that I was stupid. She actually took me to hospital in the first place. And she said, the reason I was in this state is because you let things get to you. And I said, it's not a lifestyle choice. I don't buy it at Sainsbury's or Tesco's or wherever you want to go shopping. You know, there was just no understanding at all. You know, that's just like one instance. And when you have 40 plus years of instances, there comes a time where you just say enough is enough. And actually, I used to say to my doctor, this is no word of a lie, I used to say, my family are going to end up killing me because they were just so toxic. And so I made the decision to block them, and I have never looked back, ever.
And this is what I was going to ask, and I actually wrote it here. It's about cycles. So obviously, like, for these things to happen again and again and again, I guess there must have been times where you've sort of forgiven your mom, brought her back into your life, she's done it again, she's brought her back, she's done it again.
This is where this is where narcissistic family traits start getting clever. Because this is where they start making it that it's your fault.
Yes. And then that
it's your fault that the situation that's arisen, even if you're the one that's suffering, it's your fault.
And then you buy into all that, and it wears you down and down and
once
down.
the confidence is knocked.
I've never been the most confident person ever. But when it's just like time after time after time after time, and then you just stop talking, and you almost stop talking to everybody because you feel that you're just so worthless. And I can honestly say in these last 12 months, yes, there's been peaks and troughs, but generally, without them in my life, I'm a much stronger person because I haven't got that constant nag all the time, and like stupid texts and ridiculous phone calls. Like she used to come and pick me up when I used to have to go to the outpatient services at eating disorders to have my weight monitored. And she'd say, oh, well, you're so stupid not being able to drive. Why can't you eat? And then I said to her one day, please don't say these things. It's really hurtful. And she said, I'm going to ignore what you've just said. And I'm like, I really am talking to myself now. Mm-hmm. And as I say, you can cope with a couple of isolated instances, but not a lifetime of them.
The problem is that in that kind of scenario, you're not playing your role within that family, the family tree, the narcissistic family tree. Mm-hmm. You're not doing your role. And that's what the problem was. Mm. I'm not saying I'm not a trained counsellor, by the way. I'm not just saying. I'm just saying. I just know from my own research and my own experiences and stuff. Something I've learned is that as soon as you stop doing your role, doing what you're expected to do, that's when things start going wrong, and that's when for the narcissist, it could be anybody. It could be your grandma, it could be your mum, dad. It doesn't matter who it is. The person is in the driving seat where the family tree comes up to, and the person that's sat at the top. As soon as you're not behaving correctly, as far as they're concerned, that's when they will then try and manipulate you into doing exactly what they want you to do.
And it's all these mind games. And somebody actually said to me a few months ago, once you stop letting them play the mind games, they've got nowhere to go.
Yeah. Mm.
It takes the power away.
Yes. Yes. And it is all about the power.
In very much the same way as when we approach someone and tell them, when that happens, this is how I feel. And then we zip and we say nothing else. They have nowhere to go with that because you're not saying, and what do you think about it? Or you're not saying, you did this. You're saying, when you say this or when you do this is how I feel. And there's no argument with that because that's you saying, this is how I feel.
And I mean, I felt throughout my whole life that my sister is 2 years older than me. She's married. She's got children. I'm not married. I don't have children. But that's a choice I've made. But it was always throughout my whole life, I've got to be as good as her. I've got to be as clever as her. I've got to be this as her. And it was only when my stepdad came into my life when I was 18. And I remember writing about it. And it's like I went from a world that was black and white to a world that was full of colour because he was so much fun. He was amazing. I mean, he had his faults because, unfortunately, his coping mechanism was alcohol. And he died of alcoholism. It'll be 5 years ago this Christmas. But we were busy mates, and we used to laugh until we cried. I'd go clubbing because I was never allowed to go out when my parents were still together. He'd pick me up at any time of the day or night, and I could tell him anything. But then when he became ill, and he sort of became ill probably 2 years before he died, and it's only now I look back that I've realised it all, how controlling my mother was. She wouldn't let me see him. And it's the same when my grandma died. She wouldn't let me see her. And my grandma and I were really, really close. I'd go and stay with her every weekend. I'd spend school holidays with her. She was the mother that I never had, and she tucked me up in bed at night, with the electric blanket, which is quite scary to think on her. But, she was just so loving. And the same with my stepfather. And, she'd say, well, you can't go and see Mike today because he's not well. Well, you can't do that because he's not well. Don't text him, don't ring him, don't see him. So in the end, I used to kind of have to sort of sneak and see him, which was awful. And the last time I saw him, it would probably be a couple of months before he died. And he couldn't really walk very well. So he had a hospital bed downstairs. And I will never, this is imprinted on my mind forever. He was asleep when I went there. So I kind of loitered for a bit. And then he woke up and we chatted for a bit. And then we had this massive hug. And looking back, it probably was a goodbye hug. And he said to me, I can sleep at any time, but I can't see my busy mate at any time. And we just had the most amazing hug. And sadly, the alcoholism affected his mind. And he was found dead on the floor 2 days before Christmas. And I think, that just devastated me, absolutely devastated me. And the thing is my mother sort of told me all these stories about him. And I wasn't allowed to ever talk about him. I couldn't grieve for him when she was around, even though I spent the whole of Christmas and New Year just crying and crying and crying because I'd lost my best mate. And even now with things, I think, oh, I'll just text him. I think, I know I can't. And I know with this, I've done a couple of radio shows in the past, and with my charity, I know he would be cheering me on, and I'm sure he would be sat here now, can in hand, but he would just be so proud and he'd be loving it. And I've missed having. He never wanted to be my dad. He just wanted to be my best mate, which was fine, brilliant. And I just miss that somebody being there because
having a cheerleader.
Yeah, absolutely. When my grandma died, because we were very close, and it'll be, I think it's 12 years ago next month since I lost her. And again, we were really, really close. And then unfortunately she had these little mini strokes and she had to go into a home. And then again, my mother, and it's only looking back, I realise it. Oh, well, you can't go and see her today. And then she had a massive stroke, ended up in hospital. I said, oh, I'll go and see her. Oh, no, don't do that because it's not her. But yet my sister went, and then she died the next day. So I never got the chance to say goodbye.
So Pixie, now
and
do
it's
you feel that
devastating.
you're in a position now to make decisions for yourself and to be
Absolutely.
to not be taking responsibility for other people's behaviour?
I feel like a totally different person, and I know Alex knows, but my name now is not my birth name. And the reason I chose Pixie was because a medium lady said I looked like a pixie, and my stepdad used to call me Pixie, so that's why I changed my own name. But yeah, since I've sort of been on my own, if you like, with no family or whatever, or blood relations, I just feel like a different person. And it's a person who's now able to think for myself, which I know sounds a bit ridiculous, but it was like I couldn't think for myself before.
We've got your voice
now it's I don't stop talking now.
No, it's good because it's probably all those years where you were told what to say, how to speak and what to speak and
And
what
you
to
almost
do.
become a bit zombified
Yeah.
because you're not heard and you're not listened to. You just give up.
Well,
And you almost lose the power to be able to talk.
But that takes away all confidence when somebody's so controlling. It takes away
absolutely.
the feelings of autonomy that we all need.
Yes.
That's very, very difficult.
It's
to live
almost
with.
like being brainwashed in
But
a way.
you can also go the other way. So like you can be brainwashed in respect, like almost like you said, zombified. But also the other way. So like in my personal experience, I was always like the bad guy, but in the sense like I was always the one to kick off. It's always my name being chucked around the table, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which meant that as I sort of grew up, I kind of had this image of what inverted, I hate this term, but what a man's supposed to be, kind of thing. Which was measured on how many people they could hit or how hard they could hit.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Was that stuff that had been given to you? Oh, Shane.
I was about to say, but all this stuff was actually formed through labels that were given to me, and you live into them because that's what you do.
Well, that's it. I'm Shane, and I've always done this. So we carry on.
So it meant that by the time I got into adulthood, and what actually sparked my sort of turning point was my ex-wife kicking me out, and going for my divorce, that kind of stuff, which meant that. I'd sort of stopped, and luckily, to be fair, my older sister, which is kind of a bit of a weird polar opposite thing to for us two, because my older sister was she's been a massive pinnacle part of this kind of nose turn that I've had. I was on a one-way street, I was in a bad place basically, but mine didn't manifest in myself. I went outwards, I go out. I don't go in. So I got angry and I got, expressive.
It goes purple.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
So, my sister had a massive pinnacle part of that sort of change. So she walked me through a lot of it. But what I suddenly realised was actually I could give myself labels. And actually, I could take those labels and I can alter them and I can change them because... one of the most powerful things in the human psyche is how you explain yourself to yourself. How you describe yourself to yourself, and I learned that, and I started to exercise that, and it was hard because when you got those labels that are ingrained into you so vividly and so hard for so long, and they're pounded
The beliefs
into
that we
you,
grow up with can be very,
exactly.
very powerful.
And
Mine was you're shy,
Yeah.
so I grew up. Oh,
Being
I'm
shy.
Carla and I'm shy.
Yeah.
And then I got to kind of 15, 16 and thought,
no, I'm not.
no, I'm not. I'm actually really quietly considerate, but also quite able to hold my own and have a conversation.
Yeah.
So for me, my reaction was to pack my things and leave.
See, mine was the complete opposite. I was always told I was mouthy. My mum was always like, your mouth's going to get... Yeah, I am. Yeah, my mum was like, your mouth is going to get you into trouble, but, no, look what's going on.
But we can carry those labels with us. We have to be... It's a great thing to become self-aware and to start to understand who we are and what the things are that have been given to us.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You know, and we choose.
What happens to someone when they lose that power? I mean, let's try and help someone. That's similar in my situation. Words, Alex. Words. In a
That mouth's going to get you into trouble, mate.
in a similar situation to me, whereas, like, yes, I am super confident, and yes, I'm really outgoing, and I can speak to anyone. But yeah, I find myself freezing up on a playground. I'm losing my superpower. What would you say to someone similar to me? How would you? This isn't like the sneaky wee saying, "Help me, free therapy." No, but what would you say to someone that needs to gain a bit of confidence?
Okay, so firstly, I don't... Counsellors don't diagnose. They don't tell people what's wrong. They look at what's happened.
Yeah.
They look at who you are now and maybe what's gone on in your past. What would I say? Most people are made up of different facets. You know, you have no idea what's going on in other people's lives. You may see Mr. Confident. You don't know whether he falls apart in other circumstances.
And actually, confidence can be a big mask for actually being incredibly shy.
Absolutely.
And introverted.
Yeah.
But because they, as you say, they see someone confident and larger than life, they don't sort of think that that's perhaps hiding something.
No, that's right.
Because that's a way of coping.
Yeah. I often work with people who are going through change. They may be doing some new things and they're frightened.
Because change is really scary.
Massive. And people don't realise that most people find change frightening.
Yeah.
And once we start to accept that everyone has their stuff that they're afraid of, everyone gets nervous. I challenge anyone to say, oh, I never get bothered about anything. I work with people when they come into the room, they say, I'm really scared when I meet them for the first time. And I say, okay, I'm going to share with you that when I'm meeting a client for the first time, I might feel a bit anxious because I've never met you before. So I have that feeling of, what's going on? Are we going to get on?
I think,
it's natural.
I mean, sort of going back to a bit to Al, I mean, with regards to being confident and stuff, I think, especially as a man, there is another pressure from with just being a man, because blokes are expected to behave, be a certain, be I hate the term, be man up and that kind of stuff. You're not supposed to be quiet or reserved or emotional or nervous. You're not supposed to.
And you're certainly not meant to cry.
No.
As I've read a lot about lately. Oh, man up, don't cry, don't.
Yeah. And it's.
But that's normal.
Yeah, and
of course it is. Yeah.
A lot of people. Again, I think it's a generational thing as well, because, like, for example, like my dad, he's not well. My mum would probably say differently, because she obviously would see a different side to my dad. But we certainly never saw an emotional dad. He was all very, hard man, like hard faced, and he never got upset, and and which meant that obviously as I've got a brother, as lads, we were just like.
You took your cues from what you saw around
exactly.
you.
So that's how we're supposed to behave. But actually, something I try and drill into my kids, it's absolutely okay to be upset. That's absolutely fine. It's absolutely okay to be angry. That's fine. Because my lad does struggle with his temper. And I say to him all the time, that's fine. If you're angry, that's absolutely okay.
But it's an interesting one, because people say, like Alex, you said, if I get nervous, what am I going to do? If I get anxious,
Yeah, this is what I'm learning on at the moment.
Yeah,
like, you know,
but we say anxiety. I see lots of people, they come to me, they say, I've got anxiety. But what does that mean? We can pull it apart. Anxiety might be the top word that we're looking at, but what's it made up of? And then we try and it can be
people.
Shame, it can be sad, it can be hurt, it can be frustration. It can
Insecurity,
be made up of so many different things. And the really important thing, I think, when I'm talking to people or when we're talking about feelings, is to try and identify that it isn't just one. It wouldn't just be anger. Anger might be made up of many different things. If the top level feeling is anxiety, what's underneath it? What's going on for you? It could be that you feel you want to please the people around you. So that could cause anxiety. It could be shame about something. There's many different facets to what's going on for us all the time.
Sorry, I know I'm making some weird faces. My mixer is on the. I'm pretty sure it's about to die. It's just it's making some weird noises. And this is. I feel like there's certain things I've found easier to deal with than I guess others. I guess I'm lucky in a way. I mean, with my dad living in Ireland, me and my mom, we're close, but I don't need my mom, you know. I don't need cuddles and things like that. I can kind of deal with things. So like when it comes to like, things like anxiety, I'm not like, oh my God, this is the end. What am I going to do? Panic. Can't do this. I'm kind of like, this is a problem. Let's deal with it, you know. That's what I did straight away. And I feel sorry for people that can't do that. They kind of panic. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do.
To be fair, you know, that's a bit like how me and you met.
Yeah.
In all fairness, because like I met Al at the prison.
You were kind of like where I am right now.
Sort of like you know, I was just about to start going through my divorce. Actually, I think I can't remember. I was you know, it was all in motion. Put it that way. And I went to the prison, I was acting there, and Al turned up because he was like, I want to meet some new people. So he just come walking in, and bless him, he was like a lost sheep he was. It was quite funny. Come shuffling. He was like, hello, I would like some friends, please. And it was so cute, bless him. And I turned around with an eyeball hanging out and like my brain out and makeup all over my face. And I was like, yeah, come here. And I started doing his makeup. But then we got talking, and me and Al found that we actually had a very similar background, you know, like in fact weirdly similar in some senses, and I was saying when I was struggling with my temper and you know and anxiety and that kind of stuff and lots of stuff going on, and you know I'm struggling, and we got talking about that, and he just said, oh, you should come on the podcast. And I was like, oh, okay, because you know this is what Al does, hence why he's really good at this, you know, doing podcasts.
You think I'm good at it, but there's me just twiddling things on my mixer right now. I'm just kind of like,
he's, you know, this is what. Sorry to talk for you, mate, but like I can see you busy.
I'm trying to keep you guys going. This is what
Al does to help with his anxiety. You know, he just sort of sings himself into his mic, and he says, you know, come on a podcast, and that's what I did. I come on a couple of the episodes on the other podcast, and that's where it kind of went on from there. You know, and it's just quite nice the fact that we both managed to sort of find each other, and then both kind of help each other out, because obviously whenever I have a bit of a wobble patch, you know, Al, I need to have a whinge, like you know, and vice versa.
It's nice having that, because I've had that in the past. I mean, I was talking on the other show, Thorskin. I was talking about two songs that changed my life, and it's those. I think I just attached them to an incident in my life where things just suddenly took a change. I don't know, and I feel like the podcasting is similar to that. It's like self-therapy. Especially with the other show where I can kind of swear and be a bit more raunchy. And kind of like, guys, this is what's happened today, and I don't like it.
You know, that's
certain
really
words.
Interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I always say to people when they come into the room and start to talk to me is, talk to me as you. If you get cross, if you want to laugh, if you want to talk in a horrible way about somebody, if you want to swear, just be yourself. Because the minute that people start to edit themselves, again, they're putting barriers up. And I'm always very open with people. Be you.
Yeah.
Because it's really helpful in a counselling situation to be yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, the only expert on you is you, isn't it? You know,
absolutely.
And no one can tell you what's right for you.
No.
It's only yourself that can do that.
And that's important for anyone listening to know that a counsellor is not an expert in you.
No.
You are your expert. You're there to to have someone alongside you in a 50-50 relationship with no power, who's not going to tell you what to do, but who's going to be there and listen really openly to you.
Yeah.
So I might just want to outline again, just from my perspective as well. If anybody is listening that hasn't done counselling and wants to do counselling, then don't think that you're going to be sat in a room with a spotlight on your
Like
face,
a dentist,
being like, right, what is wrong with you, and it's all really daunting. It really isn't like that. In my experience, I've walked into a room, I got given a cup of coffee. And the first couple of days I was just chatting about just anything. I can't even remember the first couple of times, to be honest. It was just so chilled.
Yeah.
And the way counsellors operate, I find fascinating because, for example, my counsellor, I was talking. I was talking about my mum and my sister and all sorts of stuff, just rattling on. And all of a sudden, my counsellor didn't really say a lot for the first couple of times. And all of a sudden, she sort of just turned around and she went, okay. She's like, well, I've heard you talk a lot about your sister and talk about your brother and talk about your mum and all this sort of stuff. She goes, you haven't really spoken a lot about your dad. She's like, do you want to talk about that? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, didn't I? And she's like, yeah.
And that's our role. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, and I completely didn't even realise, And then it's quite funny because I realised through counselling that I can get a little bit evasive, and I kind of try and sort of dodge.
And that's one of my questions. And
I was very good at doing that.
Once I've been working with people for a while, I'll say, "You're deflecting." What aren't you saying to me today?
Yeah.
Because sometimes people, weigh into our relationship. People come in and they say, "Oh, it's raining loads today, and it's been a bit horrible, and I'm a bit cold, and my daughter's done this, and my dog's just done this," and I say, "Okay, I'll let it go for a little while," and then we try, and then I'll say, "Well, what's going on? What's underneath the dog and the daughter and everything else?"
I had quite a bad experience with a counsellor. Nothing morbid or anything like that, but I was an angry little child and I wanted to break things and punch people and shout at people. So they sorted me out a counsellor, and I went there. And when you walk into a room and you're nervous about what's going on, but you're still really angry and got all this energy. And I went in there and he was really nice. He was really nice. I was just like, I can't be angry at you. And he was like, okay, take a seat. And he just sat there. And I was just like, what is this? I can't deal with this. And would you say that? Would you say that like counselling just isn't for everyone?
You got to be in the right place. You got to be ready. And that's part of what I will say to people. Are you here because you want to be, or because somebody's told you should come?
I have been there many times.
It doesn't work. It's not going to work.
I will readily admit I really struggle with going to therapy. I have tried. Obviously, when I was in hospital, I had to have therapy and we had to attend group lessons.
Had to. Hard that is to hear.
And because that was like part of the rules or what, I'd already had a previous admission for anorexia 17 years ago at a different hospital, and the groups there were a lot better. This time the program ran for 6 weeks, and obviously because I was there for like 6.5 months, you did the same program goodness knows how many times. But my eating disorder consultant always laughs with me, and he used to say that my attendance at therapy was very patchy, and I sort of laughed and went, oh yes, because I always found it too hard to talk about myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with you saying that you have to be in the right place and about what people do and don't talk about. I used to have a community mental health worker that used to come and see me at home, and all I talk about were my cat and my old horse. That was all I talk about for each session.
Because it was safe for you to do that.
It was safe. And I used to say to my doctor, it's lovely. I can talk about them for hours.
Yeah.
But that's not really helping
not getting under the
me.
Surface.
I tried cat therapy, not as in furry cat therapy, as in cognitive analytical therapy for people who don't know.
What is that?
Now
Cognitive analytical.
It's sort of like
Sorry, I mean, what's
it's
that?
like analysing, sort of like I think your experiences and things, but because, I mean, I must admit, there was a lovely therapist I saw whilst I was in hospital, and the staff always used to say I was okay there because I had the support 24/7 while I was there. But the minute I started to have therapy in the community, I just couldn't cope with it. And a lot of it was through eating disorders, obviously because of my anorexia. But because I have other mental health diagnoses, I have bipolar type 2, borderline personality disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder because of what I've been through. It was very hard for them to put me in a hole, because it was like putting a square peg into a round
hole. And it
hole.
doesn't work for everybody.
No.
This is the thing. It's
And
really important.
I used to say to them,
that.
you know, you can't just pigeonhole me there, because it's not just an eating disorder. And don't get me wrong, having an eating disorder is hardcore, because it has the highest mortality rate of all mental health diagnoses. And on top of everything else, like, you know, everything is like 4 times the challenge. And I used to say to one therapist I saw there, I don't want to talk about that, which was turned into the huge elephant in the room, which just grew and grew and grew. And when the pressure got too much, one day I just picked up my bag and just walked out. And I've just found my doctor, obviously he isn't mental health trained, but because he is such a good listener, and I mean, he knows everything about me, and I mean everything, you know, and he's been a huge support.
That's really good.
But I've just found, you know, therapy isn't for me, but I've done other things.
But it sounds like there is therapy in what your
Yes.
doctor is offering, in that he's there and he's supporting and he's listening.
And I just want to say
so
very, very
important.
quickly on sort of therapy, animals, because I must talk about them.
Yeah.
I have a rescue cat and I have a rescue horse, and they are amazing. I lost my old horse just over a year ago, and I got an ex-racer rescue horse, and both him and my cat are just such a huge motivation factor for me to stay well. It's really hard, but it's a lot of it's about unconditional love, which I've never experienced. But I just think animals are just the most amazing therapy.
I would agree with you
for
with
me
that.
personally.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
you know, I always say they have rescued me as much as I've rescued them.
Yeah.
It's a 2-way process, and I just had to mention them.
That's why I
because
keep
they're
Shane around.
So
You're right.
important.
You're my rescue animal.
Cheers, mate.
You give me support.
I've worked with quite a lot of people who have animals, have dogs, have cats, and they find that unconditional love
Yeah.
in a time when they're really struggling.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I mean, as I say, I've only had my horse for just over 12 months. We have the most incredible bond, and people think we've been together like for years and years and years. But it's just, we're just in sync.
Yeah.
And, you know, every day I can't wait to get up so I can go and see him, you know. And before I had a horse, I sort of struggled because perhaps I didn't have to go out of the house as much. Whereas now I have to be well enough to drive. I have to be well enough to look after him, because looking after a horse is a full-time job, you know, and they just give me hope. And I think it's so important that...
And no judgment either.
Exactly.
They're there for you.
Yeah, you know.
You're there for them. They're there for you.
it's just amazing.
There's a lot about support animals in the news and like in the media lately. There's lots of like sort of planes, things like that. But you know, it's really encouraged, isn't it? You know, support work
And quite a lot of
support cats.
psychiatric hospitals do have pets as therapy.
Yeah.
When I was in Stafford, there used to be a dog that used to come, and I know my previous admission was with the Priory Hospital. That was the hospital that they used. That wasn't me being all posh and, you know, I go to Priory Hospital. But I follow them on social media, and they have pets as therapy too, you know, and it is hugely important. And it's something I just rave about because, you know, they just give you something.
Can I go back to what you said about, you know, just back to about your doctor? You found this doctor who listens, who's there, who understands you. For me, the kind of therapy that I do, which is person-centred, which is all about building a relationship and being there for somebody. That's it. What you said, being there, listening, understanding. We don't understand everything because we can't, because we're not that person who is there with us. But we try to put ourselves in that person's frame,
and
in that map of the world and the trust. That's right. Absolutely.
I mean, to be honest, when I first went to him, I used to find him just a little bit scary. I mean, now, the only time he sort of flounders a bit is when I cry, because I don't cry very often with him. And then he kind of starts to panic about what I'm going to do. But, you know, if I'm having a crisis, I can just ring him up and he will literally ring me straight back, you know. I can get an emergency appointment with him, you know, he'll ring me up, or I can go and see him, you know. And it's because I have massive trust issues, and I think it's really important to be able to find either a counsellor, doctor,
the
therapist,
continuity of
whatever.
care.
Yes, it's continuity of care, and
so
it's
important.
Trust. And I think, you know, that's one of the reasons I have floundered when it comes to therapy, because I have massive trust issues. And I think you can't engage fully in anything until you trust somebody.
I would agree with you, and I think that's the real key point with the work that I do at Green Oak, and also in my private practice, that it's not a limit to the number of sessions that people can have. So people will come in, and I'm not saying you can come here 8 times and then you've got to be better, because that isn't going to work.
No.
Or
some people it might.
It might, no, but it might. It isn't a thing to be setting that out in the first instance.
And then there's the pressure to think, that's right. I've only got 8 sessions. Oh my God.
I'm not okay.
I've got to feel better.
And
excuse me. And if I don't feel better, I must have failed.
I'm a failure. And that's why I think it's really important to highlight that open-ended offer in our county is really important. We can say you can come for as long as you need to. I saw 2 people last year who came to me for 24 sessions each. The average last year was about 6 when I did my figures for the year. But 24 sessions. And they'd both finished at that point, and they were ready to go and get on with things, and worked up some resilience. But they know that they can come back, and that
that's the key,
hopefully,
isn't it?
As long as I'm still around, I'll be there. But there's the continuity there, and the feeling that somebody's not going to say, right, okay, that number of sessions you've had that's over. We can't guarantee that the person's going to be there. I can't guarantee that I won't drop off this mortal coil, but as long as I'm doing the work, I can make the offer to people. I think it's important.
Do you think we can swerve this towards sort of the workplace for a little bit? I wanted to talk about that.
You read my mind. I was just going to say, can we bring this round to the workplace?
Because obviously that's like where I'm at right at the moment, and I'm really selfish, and I want to talk about what I want to talk about. No, because I think it's really important, because work isn't easy sometimes. There's a lot of people out there that are under pressure, especially nowadays when you got people doing jobs of like 3 people for the same amount of money, and especially people in retail that are like, oh, you didn't put enough pieces of chicken in my KFC bucket, I want to speak to the manager, all that sort of stuff. It's hard, right? It's really hard. And especially with someone like I work in support, like I developed these myths inside my head, these demons. Like, if I tell them that I'm struggling with anxiety, they're going to tell me that this isn't the right job for me, blah 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 blah. And that's absolute nonsense, because in actual fact, my manager and my colleagues were actually really supportive of me, and they really helped me out. And I don't know, why do we make these demons up? What happens there? Is it an insecurity? Is it? Do you feel like you are insignificant because of these problems? This is what I want to discover.
There's an element of shame around admitting for a lot of people.
And I think then you start to compare yourself to Joe Bloggs or whoever, and you think, oh, well, they're doing that.
Who appears to be okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean, especially if you're in if you're a guy in a real emasculated sort of area, like a garage, for example, if you work at the gym, or if there's somewhere it's like, bro, and you kind of like, that is an environment where you can't be like, I'm feeling really low, I need a cuddle, No,
weirdly enough.
Or can you? I wonder if you can.
Yeah. It's a
you
stigma.
can, actually. Well, I mean, in my personal experience of working in garages, I've never had much of a problem. In all fairness, I've always worked with pretty decent blokes that just get it. You know, they're pretty sound.
But I think straight away, as soon as you say garage, you think of a blokey culture.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't you?
And maybe that's a fault of mine, mate.
Which is stereotyping, which is wrong, but that's what you think.
But, but you say about that, I mean, I've worked with people who work in labouring industries, men. And I mean, like you say, you know, blokes.
Yeah.
And they come to talk to me, and it's difficult for a first couple of sessions. And they come and they have been grown up with the idea that they are hard as nails.
Yeah.
And then I will challenge and I'll say, but you're not. And no, they're not, because it's a mask that they have learned to wear. And when the mask comes down, eventually, when we gain the trust and the mask is lowered gradually, you know, people are people. We are all human.
Yeah.
I used to be a healthcare assistant, and I'd started the job when my stepdad had become quite poorly, and that was in the July 4 years ago. And I was starting to struggle, got signed off for 2 weeks on compassionate leave. And then I just struggled all the time. My anorexic thoughts kicked in. And I used to cry on every shift. I worked 3 or 4 12 and a half hour shifts a week. And, you know, you sort of be given a hug and a pat on the back. Right, you know, come on then, you know, there's blood pressures to do, there's what, you know. And on what turned out to be my last day, unbeknown to me at the time, I was on a shift with no sort of real friends that day, which was sort of quite hard. I was feeling really unwell, but didn't know why. We had a new patient in, and he said to me, "Gosh, you're so cheery at this time in the morning." And I said, "Well, I'm paid to be happy. You don't want to see me moping around, you know. I'm a care assistant. I need to be chirpy, you know." By 11:30, I was hysterical. I just felt so unwell all morning, didn't want to go off sick because I'd had 3 operations in 18 months. My sick record at previous jobs was awful because of this. I got back on the ward after break and I said, unless you let me go home, I'm going to jump out the window. And I meant it. You know, I was not messing around. And the sister who was in charge that day said, "We're not trained to deal with people like you now."
Oh. And you'd think someone in that sort of profession would know better.
Yes, exactly. And it's amazing because these so-called work friends just disappeared. It was literally like I died, because from sort of having text from a lot of people, went down to a couple of people. After a couple of months, it was nothing.
Do you think people were frightened? Frightened of what they didn't understand?
Yes. Oh, definitely. Because obviously, you know, when someone is threatening to jump out the window, I mean, I was hysterical. Unbelievably, they let me drive home. They made an appointment with a locum doctor who upped my antidepressants because I'd been struggling, you know, because none of the antidepressants were working and I was just floundering all the time. So I saw this locum and he said, "I'll sign you off for 2 weeks, but if you feel better, then you can go back." And I said to him, "I'm not going to feel better." And then I saw my doctor, because I'd only seen my doctor a couple of days before, but because I couldn't explain how I was feeling. I just said that I was that I was okay. And then he saw me and he just said, "What on earth has happened?" And I said to him, "I don't know, but I know I'm not well." And then it kind of all started to come out.
Yeah.
But it sort of, you know, it took that moment. And I mean, I was very suicidal because I've got to be honest about how I was, you know, everything. I was just snowballing, you know, I wasn't in control of anything. My anorexia was in control of me, which I know sounds ridiculous, but for anyone who has suffered or is suffering with an eating disorder, anorexia can very quickly take over your mind. without you even realising it. And it was, it was just devastating to think that all these people who I thought were sort of there for me did disappear. But I think a lot of it was fear. And because they sort of like hugged me and patted me about, right, come on then, let's go back to work. I never really fully admitted to anybody what was going on because I didn't understand it myself. And it was only, as I say, when I hit rock bottom and lower that kind of 40 years of hurt and everything else just came crashing through the front of my mind, because I'd always been very careful to kind of have a bit of a lid on my emotions because that's how I've been brought up. And as I say, it took that for kind of me to make sense of everything which had happened.
I really do connect with you on that, because that's me. That's me. Like, be the good guy. I'll hold the doors open. Don't worry about him. He can shout as much as you want. You be the good guy. You be the good guy. I've taken quite a battering over the years, by people where I've just gone, it's fine, don't worry about it. I don't need to have my say. I can just go and crack on over here. It's fine. Don't worry about it. When
as long as you're behaving, everything's okay.
Yeah. That's it. And you put a lid on it, like you said. You keep everything.
And many people do that. They sort of keep loading themselves up. It's a bit like putting a cap on a volcano.
Yeah.
And then one day it blows, and
and
it's very difficult.
And it was devastating to lose so many people out of my life. Again, then it becomes a very lonely place because I wasn't well enough to work. That hasn't really changed, But a lot of people, like we're talking about putting a mask on appearances. To a lot of people will look at me. Yes, I'm thin, but people will look at me and think, well, she's fine. I've got a lovely house, I've got a cat, I've got a horse, I can drive.
But isn't that the usual thing that happens? Yeah. That we, as humans, we look around.
Yeah.
We're only concerned with ourselves. I know that sounds horrible, but we look outwards and we think, oh, they're all okay. What's wrong with me? Because everybody else is okay. And actually, it's not true.
I mean, going back sort of 8-9 years ago, I worked at a riding stables, which is how I came to have my old horse. And the minute I was diagnosed with bipolar, it's amazing how people just walk away from you.
That's fear as well, isn't it? People don't understand.
It's the unknown.
That's when you lose trust.
That comes down to education, doesn't it, ultimately?
Yeah, I mean,
just to sort of chuck a question to Carla, really. Like, so obviously we're talking about putting a lid on it in the workplace and just sort of, putting things in boxes and just putting it away and stuff. Also, with your job, you're going to
open the boxes.
Well, I'm on about receiving it. So you're listening to a lot of trauma. And if I was just thinking of putting myself, say, if I was in a counselling position, I'd be getting angry. Because some of the things which I'd be hearing, I'd be like, that's just not right. So I personally have a very strong sense of injustice. So like, when things are not fair, I get really upset about it. So surely
I do feel what's happening for people, but we do a lot of training to do this work.
Yeah. Do you find that your drawing helps?
Drawing? I don't draw as much anymore because about 5 years ago, my eyesight got very bad.
Oh, right.
So I can't draw as much now. I do design work for people.
Right.
But I've had a lot of training. So the training is about learning your boundaries as a counsellor. So I have learned what's mine and what's somebody else's. We have a lot of supervision and a lot of support. So if I've had a very difficult session, I know I can pick the phone up with my supervisor and say, this has happened. Am I working safely? I'm feeling this. Can you support me?
Yeah. Have you got like a sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Have you got like a go-to place for you to like just zone out for a bit? Is there something you can go and do just to...
My garden. And I do go away a couple of times a year for a few weeks, and my go-to place, in fact, my place where I would go if I were visualising a relaxing place, is standing on the edge of the sea, looking out, because there's nothing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, it's peaceful, hopefully it's quiet. You know,
So-
I love that. It's
So
beautiful.
you must have quite a strong sense or strong sort of compass of your circle of concern and circle of influence. Which is something which I've been learning quite a lot recently. The stuff which stuff circle of concern and circle of influence. So if your circle of influence is bound to be smaller than your circle of concern, and it's trying to concentrate on the stuff that you can actually influence around
and
you.
It's very important to know, as I said, what's mine.
Yeah.
What's someone else's? What can I do about this? Is this mine to take away?
Yeah.
It sounds cold, but it's really important, because if I'm going to be effective with someone, I've got to be objective. I've got to be there for them, but not become involved in their stuff that's going on, or their trauma or their drama. I'm really fortunate. I've worked really hard to have a very supportive family.
Yeah.
I don't take individual stuff home with me to my house, but
Does it happen occasionally?
what, taking it home?
Yeah, it's bound to leak a bit, I guess. No,
I can't.
Really?
I don't do it because I can't. I might say, I've had a tough day, or I've had a really brilliant day. Something amazing happened.
Yeah.
Somebody's finished their sessions and they're flying. They're amazing.
I bet when someone has a breakthrough, it must be an
It's
amazing
wonderful.
feeling for both them and you.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to be able to share that with somebody. And when someone says, I think I'm coming to the end, or actually what happens is I'll say, I sense we're coming to the end of our sessions, because I can tell.
Yeah.
And people go, oh, how did you know? Oh, wow.
My
I kind
counsellor
of
did
know.
the same.
Yeah.
She turned around, she goes, you know what? I think that, it's your call. Obviously, it's completely your choice, but I reckon you're all right.
And mine is, I'll say, I sense we're coming to an end here. And then that feeling when someone says, yeah, I can do this, or I think I can do it, so is often. And then I'll say, well, the door's open. But it is an amazing thing. And I've worked over the summer. I often work with people who are home from uni and are worrying about going back to uni.
Yeah, because there's a lot at the moment, isn't it,
Of
about
course.
university students really struggling
So kind
with
of
the pressure.
June to end of September, I'll have a load of people who are going back to uni for second year often. And we work towards it. We know we've got a limited time. And it's the loveliest thing to work with somebody who says, yeah, I'm ready. I'm still struggling a bit, but I'm ready to go back.
Well, it's easy to fall into like the rut of using of having it's easy to fall into the rut of receiving the help, which you absolutely are entitled to need, but then using it as a bit of a crutch. I think that you kind of
It's about work.
Yeah,
Doing the work.
Yeah, this is what I was going to touch on as well. Is that counselling isn't just a case of just sitting down and talking.
No, it's work.
Hard.
Yeah.
It can be hard.
Incredible.
And when you get to that sort of point where you start really digging in, that's when it gets hard. But one thing, if anybody's listening is thinking about doing counselling, one thing I can absolutely assure you, if you stick with that process and you work through it and you pace it out and you get through to the other side, it's the most invigorating thing you could ever do. And it will work.
Well, it works for many people. Some people, like I said before, some people aren't ready or haven't found the right person.
I don't think I could do it. I really don't think I could do it because, like I said, there's so many things I've just kind of gone, no, it's fine.
I liken that to getting a mad cat, putting it in a cardboard box, taping it in, and putting it on a shelf where you can't see it. At some point, that cat's going to claw its way out of the box.
And that's what's happening to me now.
But
I'm kind of like,
if you're working it through with someone, you can decide to get the cat, let it out, have a look at it, put a bit more tape on, put it back, have another look.
And I think it's also important. I mean, as I've said, it hasn't worked for me, but I don't think people should get disheartened if it doesn't work first or second time. As we've said
keep going
already,
Keep going.
it's about finding the right person and being in the right place.
It took me just short of 50 hours, I think I had of counselling. And that got me to a point where my counsellor was like, right, I think you're at the point now where you can start to think about start dealing with this stuff on your own. You know, so obviously she always made it very clear that it wasn't a gun to my head. You know, there was no pressure, but she was just like, it was because I kind of got to a point where I was getting a bit like, well, it's okay, I'll just talk about that with my counsellor. And I got to the point when she goes, well, actually, you know, I'm not going to be here. I can't be here forever.
It's about learning to counsel yourself.
Exactly.
That's
so it's
really important.
It's getting rid of that crutch and learning.
Speaking of crutches, I wanted to talk a bit about like vices and the things we hold on to and the things that distract us. So like you're saying, where you're drawing, me and my podcasting, Shane doing
with work probably,
with work. And Pixie, your horse, you know,
And my cat.
and your cat. There are those things, and people talk about drugs and alcohol and things like that. And it's a vice. And
Are they vices and crutches, or are they enjoyable stuff that we do because we feel safe and comfortable?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I'm not talking about necessarily. Actually, I could be talking about drugs or drink, but I'm talking about, you know, your horse, Pixie, my creative work, your podcast, Shane, your stuff, you do your work, your, whatever it is. Your cat. But there are other things that there are ways that people relax, lose themselves, are things that people are interested in.
I like to think
something which works for you. I mean, it could be doing a crossword, you know, or going for a walk or whatever. And it's like going back to my stepdad and with his alcoholism, it can become just a social. It starts off as just a social thing, and then before you know it, it's flipped into something more. And I think sometimes it's hard to recognise that.
The dependence?
Yes, yes. Because once you are dependent on something, it's very hard to find another coping skill.
they've linked, haven't they linked like social media with like dopamine levels and things like that?
Oh
like,
yeah, that's why people do. Yeah, it's exactly the same. There's when you get a text or when you get Facebook, you know,
like
up on your phone, and your phone vibrates. It literally releases dopamine in your brain.
It's an interesting one to sit and quietly and think about that. So, and to notice what's happening. A lot of the work that I do with people is about noticing how they feel. So if someone's thinking, I'm not affected by my phone, it's quite an interesting one to sit quietly, wait till your phone goes off, and then just let it be and see how you feel if you let that keep doing what it's doing. Because it can be a bodily feeling.
Yes, because then people might get one like for a post or two, and then it might be 10. But then the next day, it might be nothing. And then you start to go in on yourself and think, well, why isn't it be like that? I'm not good enough, you know. And
it can create a massive pressure. But there is also the other side of social media, which is absolutely amazing for people who might otherwise feel isolated or
brings the world in a bit, doesn't it?
Might have something to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, I find it fantastic for talking to people about the counselling work. I've been using it for years. I've been using Twitter since 2008 to connect with people who were making art, and I'd shown my work in the States, on a massive billboard in Colorado, all sorts of places. It can be an opener. It can be isolating in some ways, but it can also be
open up a whole new world.
I've got a massive problem with my phone. I have. I've always got it in my hand. I've always very much aware of where my phone is, and I'm constantly checking it, and it's a problem. And I do try really hard to not do that, especially when I'm going out for a meal with my girlfriend, because she doesn't really.
I did it last night. Last night I was feeling really anxious last night. My anxiety was like probably the highest it's been. So I put my phone to the other side of the sofa, completely ignored it, and just sat and watched TV. And then when I woke up this morning, I had messages bing, 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 bing everywhere. It was crazy. But it kind of felt good just to be away from it.
To be in control. That is about being in control.
Yeah.
So, do we all know about the Calm app?
Yes.
You do, Pixie. The Calm app. I said this to a client. I said, have you got the Calm app? And he said, why would I want a car map? No, Calm, CALM. Yeah. The Calm app. It has relaxations. It has meditations on there. It has peaceful stories. It's got a thing called 7 Days of Sleep, relaxation. It's great. If you've got a smartphone, it's really well worth downloading. Some people get on with it. Others think it's a bit irritating, but I often recommend it to clients. It can be useful.
I've actually got like a relaxation and meditation playlist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And quite often I'll sit or I'll lie in the dark and just listen to it. And
very, very useful.
Really helps. Yeah.
Do you know what annoys me? Like going back to social media, is like when you're a creator. You've done design work in the past. You'll appreciate this. Is when you've put time and effort in something. So, like, I was on the ferry back from Ireland, and I made this amazing poster with the Shrewsbury Biscuit logo.
I was going to say, make yourselves comfortable because I think it's going to be here a while.
I made this amazing poster with the Shrewsbury Biscuit logo bursting through a piece of paper, and I had all the places where you can find the show. I put it onto Instagram, put it onto Facebook. I got one like.
Were you crushed?
I was destroyed. I was ruined. So, like, this game that I'm playing right now, this whole podcast thing, it can be quite dangerous for someone in my situation, I guess, because like if I release a piece of content that nobody's interested,
but
I've spent 3 hours.
Nobody's seen it, Alex. If nobody's liked it,
they
may
have
have seen it. They may be acknowledging it to themselves. I don't use Instagram, because it would just be another time bandit for me. But but I might see things on Twitter or Facebook. I don't necessarily like them, but I might have seen them, and I might think, oh yeah, I'll. And if I post an article on my counselling page on Facebook, I don't care how many likes I get, because I know people read them.
It's not about the likes.
It's interesting when you're doing it, but like even then, even back then, I was kind of like, well, I enjoyed doing it. I genuinely enjoyed designing things. So I was kind of like, oh, that's horrible. I can't believe that. But I was like, well, come on, you had a good time doing it, and it looks awesome. You're a good drawer, Alex. Well done, you.
That's what you're moaning about then.
Being a creative person can be quite an insular thing, and. A creative person who is creating things to show to other people. Yeah. You've got to be confident in what you're doing. Otherwise, it is going to knock you back.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's a tough one. A commercial designer is someone who, as the way that I've worked for years, is that I have to work in tandem with the client. In the same way that I work with a counselling client, in that I'm trying to get out of the client, whether they're design or counselling, what it is they don't know about themselves that they want. It's very much the same process.
You think of it like that, yeah? I mean, you're about to go on an adventure, Pixie, with your charity. Now, let's talk about a bit about that, because
tell us about it.
It's very interesting that you've gone through this experience, though.
What's it called?
It's called Pixie Belle Warriors, and that name actually came about through Twitter. I have 2 Twitter accounts and I have 2 Instagram accounts, not because I'm being vain or up myself, but one is more for my charity and one is more for my everyday stuff. And this idea, which I thought was kind of a bit of a crazy idea, came about early one Sunday morning, 4:00, couldn't go back to sleep. I'm really creative, more so I think since my last hospital admission. I'm not sure whether there's a link. I think there probably is. I've always been quite arty crafty, but never encouraged. I mean, I did art at school, but because my work was different to everyone else's, I couldn't do that because I had to follow this, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So 4:00 one Sunday morning, sat on the bedroom floor, me and my cat, looking through all my craft books, thinking, what can I make today? And I came up with this idea of making some lovely sparkly gift bags, which I will post to our group so you can put them up or whatever, for women's refuges. Because I can't say a lot about it, because even though the investigation is on hold, it's still a police investigation. And so I came up with this idea of making some homemade things, a positive affirmations jar, because I'm very into my quotes. I made some hearts and various things. So I've only recently got into Facebook, probably in the last year or so. So I messaged some refugees on Facebook thinking, I'm not going to hear back, or no one's going to be interested. Ping, 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 ping. Yes, please. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I've
done something.
No. And then I sort of widened it to children's hospitals as well. Countess of Chester Hospital are using my bags to for their fundraising. And I thought, right, okay, how can I what's the word? It's gone completely out of my head. How can I grow this?
Make it sustainable.
Yeah, to make it happen. So I got some wristbands printed with Pixie Belle Warriors, and my tagline is "I'm proud to speak out loud," because with my doctor's support and encouragement, 12 months ago, I actually went to the police, and that was my thing. I'm proud to speak out loud. You know, I've done this. I've said words I never thought I'd be brave enough to say, which actually, in a weird way, has sort of turned out to be my therapy. Because I refuse to talk about it to therapists. I go and say, no, I'm not talking about that. And they'd say, well, surely that's one of the reasons that you're here. And it's like, I don't want to talk about it. And then I just run away. And I spent my whole life running away from it. And my doctor was like, no, come on. So actually, losing my horse last year turned into this catalyst to make all these changes. So I am in the process of applying for some funding to get some T-shirts printed. My colour scheme is red and purple. And the T-shirts are going to be purple with a red heart saying, I'm proud to speak out loud. And it's about breaking down the stigma. Today, I had some very exciting news where I keep my horse, which is at the Isle at Bicton, which is an amazing place. They have agreed I can do some mental wellbeing walks, some arts and crafts sessions. So if anyone is interested, they can... Am I right to give my email address?
You give everybody all your details.
Okay,
Whatever you want.
okay. My email is pixiebell75@gmail.com, or they can find me on Facebook. I'm Pixie Belle Bradbury Jackson. It'd be really nice, even if we only had a couple of people or 10 people, it doesn't matter. It's about getting a group together who can share experiences and just enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the exercise, because I find being outdoors with my horse is huge therapy for me, you know.
And walking is an amazing thing.
And the walks around the Isle are just out of this world.
There's something really special about being next to somebody. If I can say about, sometimes when we're in a car with someone, we might have a really meaningful conversation because we're not sitting face to face.
And
we're
there's no
sitting
pressure.
side by side. There's no pressure. And we almost have to listen. And it can be the same with walking.
Yes.
We're not necessarily looking at each other. We can walk away if we want to.
Yeah.
We can walk at a slower pace. We can speed up.
Yeah.
We get to a difficult point and we can say, oh, look at that beautiful tree. And it diverts for a few minutes. It's a really good way to work.
You saying about water, I mean, I find water incredibly healing. They've got some lovely lakes at the Isle. They've got some pools. We're actually the River Severn runs through the estate, so you know there's lots of beautiful walks, you know, where we can either, you know, walk for 5 minutes if that's all you want to do, walk for an hour, then, you know, go back and have like tea, coffee and biscuits, you know. And the people at the Isle have been incredibly supportive to me. You know, they've taken me in, you know, and they are really behind this charity that I'm doing. And, you know, it's just about getting something started, and it's about starting a conversation, because I know when I've spoken to people about what I've been through, which is very traumatic, you can see their eyes glaze over because they can't really understand it, because it's something so awful that you just can't get your head around it.
I respect that. Absolutely.
And, you know, that's why with my podcasts, you know, obviously I can't talk a lot in detail about it, but it's about, you know, reaching out to people. It might help one person, it might help 10 people, but even if it's just, and well, not just one person, but, you know, it's about believing people, because nobody really believed what I said because I couldn't really say it. And, you know, it's very liberating to actually be able to say the words. And so if anyone's interested, you know, contact me and, you know, we can sort something out, because I think it's really important to sort of get a conversation started so that you don't feel alone, because, you know, in my situation, it can be a very lonely place. And if you don't trust people, you become very isolated. And I know, you know, when people have found out, because I'm not like the next person, people can shun you, which, you know, is really devastating. So yes, I'm trying to make it positive. The police actually know that I'm doing this charity, and they said it was really inspiring. And other people
I think it is.
who they see who have gone through a similar thing, they're actually going to tell them about me and what I've done, because it's about making something really good, making something really positive out of something awful. And that's really what I want to do.
That was what I was going to commend you on. I was going to say to you,
I'm all embarrassed though.
No. You are a warrior. You're a survivor, and not just that. You're reaching out to help other people, and that's very rare in your situation, I believe. You know, you've been through something that you struggle with, but not only have you got the strength to pull yourself out of it, you want to pull others out of it too, and that is inspirational. And I would love everybody to try and help Pixie. Tell people about your podcast. Where can people find your podcast? I want people to listen to it.
It's on Podbean, and it's called Pixie Bell.
Yeah.
And I've done, I think there's about 7 or 8 on there. I actually talked, I had an endoscopy actually a couple of days ago, and I talked about that and about how the staff didn't really know how to treat me because I started panicking, and all they kept sort of almost shouting at me saying, stop panicking, stop doing this, stop doing that. And they were aware of my mental health issues, and I came away feeling a failure because they couldn't carry on doing the endoscopy because I couldn't cope with it. And, you know, Alex has listened to my podcast I did about my charity, and I think one I did called 1 Year On. And it's about being honest, because if you can't be honest with people, there's no point in even talking about it.
I think people are often very surprised when others are honest. And this is what I say.
They know what to do.
Yeah, and this is what I say when I'm working with people in the counselling room, and I encourage them to communicate and ask for what they want. I always do it with a caveat and say, the people around you may be very used to you trying to be a people pleaser. They may be surprised when you start to ask for what you want. Be prepared.
I feel like people can be too honest sometimes. I'll go around my nan-in-laws or something like that. I'll go to see them in Colombia, and she'd be like, oh, you've put weight on. And I'm like, cheers. The sentiments there, I get it. You care about my health, but, you know. Well, look, we need to round this up because we've been going for an hour and a half, people.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's going to be very
Amazing.
long. Thank you so much, Carla, for joining us.
Thank you. You can find me at carlabolton.co.uk.
That's what I was about to say. Where can people find you, Carla? Yeah.
Just read your mind.
Yeah, I did. No, I can't read people's minds. Please don't tell people that.
I'm gonna give you a bit of love as well, like I did Pixie. You've got a very nice understanding. You've got a very, you can tell that you are good at what you do because you're very easy to talk to. You kind of take in the knowledge. You can see it slowly come out as nice, soothing words, and that's really nice.
Oh,
yeah,
you know, it's
nice. A lovely thing to say.
Yeah,
without being
it's true.
Without being too I can double that. Carla's very, very, very good at what she does.
Yeah, unlike you, because you need to go into mine.
Oh, I'm
so thank you, Shane.
And thank you to my co-host Shane as well. I do love you, buddy. And
I love you too, man.
We do. Sometimes we sit here and we gush over each other. Like,
you are a beautiful man.
I love you.
I love you. I love you.
I love you. And my son's here, and I'm telling you I love you, and not him. I love you too, son. I hope you've been. I know it's been quite an awkward subject to listen to, but I wanted to understand that it's okay to talk about things like this. I don't know if people are going to look at that and be like, a teenager shouldn't be listening to stuff like that, but I think they should.
No, it's important. No, it's important for everyone to hear this. Can I just give the Green Oak Foundation
Please
plug away.
web address? So the Green Oak Foundation are in Shrewsbury. They're a community interest company. They are at www.thegreenoakfoundation.co.uk or at 01743 340 880. Please call. Please don't be on your own. There is someone to listen to you.
Yeah. Well done. That's great. I want to give a huge thank as well to the guys at Meal Brace Trinity Church. That's right, isn't it? Is that the correct name?
Yeah, that'll do.
Trinity Churches in Meal Brace. It's a really great venue. Thank you for letting us use that
Yes,
here.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And also, I want to say thank you
Thanks, Mum.
I want to say thank you to everyone that got in touch as well, because when we announced that we were doing this show, I only have 4 microphones, and I'd already promised Pixie that you were coming on. We'd already sorted out with Carla, and then I've got Mr. Flatcap over there. That's 4 microphones, you know.
I've got a name.
So I physically couldn't bring anybody else on the show, and we did have a number. I can't get the messages up, but lots of people got in. Lots of people got in touch.
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
Lots of people got in touch, and
There was one lady, wasn't there, that messaged. She was really, really, really keen. She really wanted to come on, and we were like,
it was Elaine. It was Elaine Powney. Elaine.
Was it Elaine?
Was it Elaine?
I can't remember her name.
Yes,
I'm really sorry I can't remember your name.
It was Elaine.
I do remember a message putting out. She really wanted to come on and talk and be involved.
And she wanted to mention she does training, and she works for premiercaretraining.com, and she says that she's passionate about mental health, and so much that she now trains companies in mental health awareness, which is what we were talking about before.
In the workplace,
In the workplace. And also, you know, if any of my colleagues do actually listen to the show, I want to say thank you for being understanding what I'm going through, because it's not easy. You know, having some guy just turn. It's weird that a bald guy can walk in and look like he's been dragged through a hedge backwards. But I do sometimes.
Well, when you've got a beard like yours, it's probably not that difficult, mate.
Right. Thank you so much. You guys, this has been a really nice show. I've really enjoyed this.
It's been good. Thanks.
And make sure you guys join us next week on the show. Thank you for sitting through with us. And if you've got anything to add, if you'd like to send us in any messages of support, anything to add, make sure you email us at shrewsburybiscuitpodcast@gmail.com, or drop us a line on Facebook, because we love your messages. And thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And peace out.
Peace out.
Bye.